Saturday morning. The air was cold, sharp, but not snowy. Every breath turned into a faint mist that drifted into the gray sky, like forgotten traces of something no one cared to notice. In front of the main entrance to Birmingham International Hospital, people hurried in and out, coffee cups in hand, scarves wound tightly around their necks, eyes cast down, as if avoiding every glance and every pain. Only one person didn't move. A boy, around 9 years old, sat at the edge of the front steps on a flattened piece of cardboard, faded from use. His oversized coat swallowed his frame, sleeves rolled up high. His curly hair was gently tangled, and his worn-out sneakers, once white, had duct tape clinging to the toes. He wasn't begging. He wasn't complaining. He just sat quietly, sketching something in a small notebook. But his eyes missed nothing. A sleek black SUV pulled up to the curb. From the back seat, a man stepped out. Marcus, a middle-aged man in crisp clothes, but carrying the kind of exhaustion no amount of tailoring could hide. He gently lifted a little girl, about 6 years old, wrapped in a soft pink blanket. She said nothing. Her body curled into his arms, eyes wide open and empty. As they walked past, the boy looked up. His voice was soft, clear, certain. "I can make your daughter walk again." Marcus froze mid-step. He turned, eyeing the boy from head to toe. There was no anger in his gaze, only one thing, disbelief. Then he turned away and walked inside. Marcus Reeves wasn't a man used to waiting. In his world, everything ran on a schedule, precise, polished, and with no room for error. As the CEO of a medical tech corporation, he lived in a penthouse where service arrived before he even asked. A space so pristine, so quiet, that even the slightest sound felt like a violation. But there was one thing Marcus couldn't fix, something beyond all forecasts, all engineering, all data. Amara, his daughter, was 6 years old. She used to love climbing trees and singing Disney songs off-key. Until one rainy afternoon, the screech of tires tore everything apart. When she woke up, her legs no longer answered. She didn't cry. She didn't ask questions. She just went quiet. Quiet, as if staying silent long enough might make the world go back to the way it was. And then there was Elijah, the boy sitting on the hospital steps. He had nothing left to lose. 9 years old, no home, no father, no mother. His mother had been a physical therapist at a small community clinic. She once told him that no matter how weak the body got, it always remembered how to rise. She was gone now. But Elijah remembered. A boy surviving on memory, a girl trapped in stillness, and a father slowly dying inside the perfection that couldn't save his child. That afternoon, it rained, the kind of steady drizzle that never poured, but made everything feel grayer, heavier, harder to breathe. Inside the hospital's rehabilitation center, Amara was crying, not loudly, just dry, stifled sobs caught in her throat, like she was apologizing to her own body for not doing what it was supposed to. Marcus stood behind her, one hand resting gently on her shoulder, his eyes clouded with helplessness. Across the room, a physical therapist quietly packed away equipment. No one spoke. No one knew what to say. Stepping outside for a breath of air, Marcus didn't expect to see Elijah, crouched beside the wheelchair, whispering something to Amara. He wasn't loud. He didn't touch her. He just told a story, his voice low, steady, but clear. "You use machines," Elijah said when he noticed Marcus approaching. "I use stories." Marcus frowned. "What are you doing here?" Elijah lowered his head, not afraid, just calm. "My mom used to heal people with her hands. I learned a little. Can I try? A child, soaked in rain, dressed in torn clothes, no one knew where he'd come from, was asking permission to heal his daughter. Marcus didn't answer. He just stood there, torn between anger, doubt, and something far more dangerous, hope. You think this is a movie? Marcus's voice cut through the air, sharper than the rain pounding on the hospital awning. He stood tall, fists clenched, unsure who he was truly angry at. The strange boy who dared step into his family's pain, or himself, for not stopping him the moment those words were spoken. That little girl doesn't need hope. She needs medicine. She needs doctors, therapy, science, not some garbage stories about healing hands. Elijah said nothing. He simply lowered his head, as if used to being shut out. He didn't protest. He didn't apologize. He didn't even walk away. Just stood there, in the rain, silent, with a calmness that somehow made Marcus even angrier. Finally, Elijah spoke, just one sentence before turning to leave. I'm not asking you to believe. I'm asking you to let me try. That night, Marcus didn't sleep. His laptop was open, medical charts and diagnostic scans spread out across the desk. Replayed in his mind, but it was over and over. That boy's eyes. Not pleading, not convincing, just certain. A kind of certainty that gnawed at Marcus, because somehow Elijah looked like he knew something. Something even Amara's own father wasn't brave enough to believe. The penthouse sat at the top of the city, but tonight, Marcus felt small, like a child, lost in a fog, with no way out. Amara was asleep in the room next door. The door wasn't fully shut. Her nightlight cast a soft amber glow on the ceiling, a fading trail of light, like a flame about to go out. Then, in that fragile silence, her voice broke through. So soft, it sounded like she was afraid of shattering the hope quietly blooming inside her. Do you think he's real? Marcus froze, not because of the question, but because of how she asked it. No wishfulness, no begging, just a flicker of hope, just enough to make a father's heart ache. He didn't answer, because if he said no, he was afraid he'd kill something inside her. But if he said yes, he was afraid of himself. The next morning, Marcus didn't go to the office. He drove aimlessly, no destination, just motion, until he found himself parked outside Harrington Park. There, on the edge of the grass, knelt Elijah. He was wrapping an old woman's knee with a herbal-soaked cloth, his small hands moving carefully, tenderly, like he was working with glass. No machines, no degrees, no fame, just presence, and a kind of faith that never needed to be believed to exist. There were no medical devices, no doctors in white coats, no beeping monitors or stacks of medical files spread across a desk, just a hand towel, warmed by an old bottle filled with hot water, a faded tennis ball, and Elijah's small hands, slightly trembling, but steady with determination. They sat in the park, beneath the largest oak tree. The ground was still damp from yesterday's rain. A soft breeze whispered through the grass, carrying the scent of earth, sky, and something harder to name. Peace. Amara lay on a folded blanket, her legs stretched out, eyes wide open. Elijah placed the warm towel on her thighs, then began rolling the tennis ball along the sole of her foot. Slow, rhythmic, like he was trying to awaken something long asleep. Close your eyes, he whispered, voice as soft as the wind. Imagine you're dancing on the moon. There's no gravity there, no pain, just the sky and your legs. Amara pressed her lips together and quietly obeyed. Her eyes fluttered closed. And Marcus, he stood a few feet away, not speaking, not interfering, just watching, unblinking, as if, by watching long enough, The miracle might actually happen. It was midday. Sunlight streamed through the leaves, breaking into golden specks scattered across the grass. For a moment, the entire park seemed to hold its breath. A fragile pocket of peace in the middle of a restless city. Elijah still sat beside Amara. He didn't rush her. He didn't instruct like a doctor. He just told stories. My mom used to be a nurse. She didn't have a college degree, so the hospital wouldn't hire her. But she was really good. All she needed were her hands and time. There was no anger in his voice, no sadness either. He said it like it was just another fact, like talking about rain or sunshine. And somehow, that made it feel more real. Amara turned to him, her eyes still glowing from the moon-dancing daydream. Did she teach you? Yeah. Whenever she helped someone, I'd sit beside her and hold the towel basket. She used to say, people don't need you to be great. They need you to stay. Amara laughed, small, software, but unmistakably a laugh, the first in 5 months. Elijah looked at her and smiled too. Not a big grin, just the quiet kind, the kind that shows up when you know. You've done something right. And Marcus? He didn't smile, but he heard that laugh, and for the first time, it didn't make him feel guilty. Just lighter. A little. But enough to begin. Every bit of progress comes with a price, and hope, if not held gently with patience, can become a burden. That morning, Marcus was making coffee when a scream pierced the air from Amara's room. I don't want to do this anymore. He rushed in. She was sitting in her wheelchair, face flushed, eyes brimming with tears. Elijah's just a kid. I'm tired. Tired of trying. Tired of believing in something that isn't real. No one said anything. Not Marcus. Not Elijah, who stood in the doorway, frozen like a small shadow on the wall. For a long, breathless moment, silence swallowed the room. Then Elijah bowed his head and spoke softly, but every word carved clean and deep into the air. My mom used to say, sometimes all it takes is one person believing in you. And with that, he turned around and walked away without looking back. Marcus opened his mouth to call out, but the moment passed too quickly. That day drifted by in silence. He just stared out the window. Amara said nothing watching more. Leaves fall slowly across the empty yard. The next morning, as Marcus reached for the front door, Amara's voice rose quietly from behind him. Dad, call Elijah back. Today, I want to try again. The air was crisp. A chilly morning breeze swept through the park, gently fluttering the towel draped over Amara's knees. That day's session began like all the others. The tennis ball, the warm towel, a few ankle rotations, quiet words of encouragement. But today, something felt different. Elijah placed his hand on the top of Amara's left foot and tapped it twice. Try imagining your toe as a candle. If the wind touches it, even just a little, it flickers. Amara pressed her lips together. She didn't speak. Marcus sat nearby, not interfering, his eyes locked on her tiny feet, wrapped in soft white socks. Time seemed to hold its breath. Then, a movement. So small it could have been a trick of the light. Amara's pinky toe twitched, just barely. Marcus shot to his feet. Did you see that? You just... Amara looked down at her foot. Then she covered her face and broke into tears. I didn't know I could, but he believed I could. Elijah didn't smile. He didn't cheer. He just gently laid the towel back over her legs. A motion so familiar now, it said everything. This is only the beginning. Harrington Park slowly became their unspoken meeting place. No signposts, no schedules, just 3 people. A little girl who once believed she'd never stand again. A boy who'd never had anyone wait for him. And a man, learning how to believe again. They met every weekend. Elijah always arrived early, laying out the blanket, checking the temperature of the herbal compress, cleaning the worn-out tennis balls. Amara brought a small notebook to track every new movement. And Marcus, he brought silence. Not the kind that built walls, but the kind that listens. One cloudy afternoon, Elijah dozed off after a session. His head slumped onto his backpack, knees curled against the chill. Marcus watched from a distance. Then, wordlessly, he opened the car trunk, pulled out the old blanket Amara used to love, and gently draped it over the sleeping boy. The following week, he spoke first. "If you'd like, you can rest inside the house during lunch. There's a guest room downstairs." Elijah nodded softly. No questions asked. Then one day, as they were setting up for the session, Marcus leaned down and picked up the herbal wrap. "Hot compress first, right?" Elijah paused for a moment, not because of the question, but because of the voice. For the first time, Marcus wasn't giving an order. He was trying to learn. At first, it was just the three of them. Then one day, a boy on crutches arrived, brought by his mother. The next week, a little girl came, still shaken from an accident, flinching at the sound of car horns. A few weeks later, it was a pair of twin sisters, one recovering from a stroke, the other simply refusing to let her sister be afraid, alone. Harrington Park slowly began to change. There were no plans, no signs, no sponsors, just folded towels, well-worn tennis balls passed from hand to hand, and small circles of people, young and old, sitting close, sharing stories, warmth, and even their setbacks. Elijah never took money. Some left envelopes under his towel, others slipped bills into his backpack when he wasn't looking. But Elijah always gave it back. "I don't heal," he said. "I just sit with them until they heal themselves." One breezy afternoon, Amara sat next to a new boy. He kept his legs drawn in tight, eyes full of fear. Amara reached for his hand and tilted her head with a soft smile. "Just imagine you're flying, okay? It doesn't hurt to fall when you're already in the sky." The adults nearby stayed silent. No one said a word, but everyone understood. A place that was once just a patch of nameless grass had become the warmest recovery room in the whole city. One Sunday morning, the Birmingham Post hit the stands with a bold headline on page 2. "The 9-year-old boy and the children who began to walk through faith." The article didn't include full names. Elijah was simply referred to as the boy with the towel and tennis ball. But people began coming to the park in growing numbers. Some stood on the sidelines for hours, just watching. A group of reporters showed up, taking notes, snapping photos, asking questions. But Elijah didn't say much. He just did what he always did. Arrived early, sat down, laid out the towel, and began in silence. During one interview, a journalist turned to Marcus, asking with thinly veiled skepticism, "How do you feel about letting an unlicensed child treat your daughter?" Marcus was quiet for a moment. Then he looked up. Not angry, just tired and honest. "I've spent hundreds of thousands of dollars on professionals who never once looked at my daughter like she was toward the old oak tree," where Amara laughed and played with Elijah. Elijah's different. Not because he was better, but because he stayed. The penthouse, once so cold you could hear a pin drop, was no longer the same. Gone were the medical devices that used to take up half the living room. Gone were the charts taped to the fridge and the bright red checkup dates on the wall. Now, drawings, messy and joyful, were taped to the windows. Laughter echoed from the kitchen, and every weekend, the warm scent of cinnamon butter scones filled the air. In the middle of the floor, Elijah sat cross-legged, gently guiding Amara as she practiced writing letters, with the very foot that had slowly begun to feel again. "Make the letter A curve like a kite," he said, his hand steadying her ankle, eyes glowing like sunshine after rain. Amara giggled, nose scrunched, part proud, part teasing. "Yours looks worse than mine." That night, after she'd gone to bed, Marcus stood outside her room. He knocked softly. "Would you like Elijah to stay a little longer?" Amara hugged her pillow and nodded slowly. Her eyes sparkled, but her voice was calm, like she'd been waiting for that question all along. "I want him to be my brother." Marcus didn't say a word. He just turned away. Lips pressed tight, eyes red, like a man who had just received something precious, without ever needing to sign a contract. Sunday afternoon. The park looked just as it did every week. The blanket laid out beneath the oak tree, the tennis ball resting at the edge of the mat, and Amara getting ready for her session like always. But today was different. The air went still, as if sound had never existed. The other children stopped playing. The adults stopped whispering. Even the wind held its breath. The leaves above didn't move. Elijah gently helped Amara to her feet. No rush, no good luck wishes, just a look, and the kind of understanding only two hearts can share. Amara trembled. Her arms stretched slightly, as if reaching for balance somewhere between the air and herself. And then she walked. One step, then two, then three. No applause, no phones raised, just Marcus. Collapsing to his knees at the edge of the mat, his hands covering his face, sobbing like every year of helplessness inside him had cracked open at once. Amara paused. She turned to look back. But Elijah didn't come forward. He stood still, his gaze soft, like a night watchman who had completed his shift. Then he spoke, just loud enough for one person to hear. "Today, could you walk behind her?" Marcus looked up, tears still fresh on his cheeks. He nodded, and for the first time, he didn't lead. He followed. Because today, his daughter had learned how to move forward on her own. 1 year later. At the National Medical Conference, amid hundreds of crisp suits and slides packed with data points, a man stepped onto the stage. Not a doctor. Marcus, no lab coat, no medical degree, just a single faded photograph in his hand, a pair of old sneakers wrapped in silver duct tape. The auditorium fell silent as he began to speak, slowly, deliberately. "My daughter walks again. Not because of advanced machines, not because of bank accounts or elite doctors." He looked up, eyes steady. She stood up. Because of a child who had nothing, except patience, and the memory of a mother no one believed in. There was no applause at first, just silence. The kind that feels like something tight inside you has just been cut loose. After the speech, Elijah was invited on stage. The 10-year-old boy walked up to the podium and bowed his head. No notes, no slides, just a voice. I didn't teach them to walk, I just stayed, until they were brave enough to stand. Then he stepped down and walked toward Amara, sitting in the front row. She stood, unaided, and the entire room stood with her, not to clap, but to honor a step that began in a place where no one dared to believe, except the children themselves.